everybody. My name is Daniel Gleish. I'm the president and CEO of Madison Trust Company. And alongside of me is
Ian Robertson. I am a senior accounting executive here. Been here for 5 years now. Seen a lot of growth, a lot of good things, and happy to be here.
And just to set the bar, so this is our first webinar we're doing in quite a while. So we prepared, and I think we have some good content to deliver over the next little while. So why don't we jump right in? And I think that if we start with, on the second slide, question is, what is a self-directed IRA, which is the topic of today's webinar? I think that the best way to answer it, which actually that's going to be your job, Ian, is to talk about our story and the history of how we got here, because we started Madison Trust Company for ourselves to satisfy a need that we had when we wanted to diversify our retirement accounts. The story goes back to 2009, the short story. And prior to that, as a kid growing up, my dad had a business. Ian, you've heard the story many times. So my dad had a business, he made a living, and he was very focused on his business. My mom was very focused on investments. So whatever money was left over at the end of the year that they didn't need to support the family, they invested in, and they worked with Fidelity. And my mom did a great job, and parents got along great. My dad focused on the business, mom focused on the investments. And for whatever reason, which I still don't know, the two shall never meet. Unfortunately, the sad part of the story is that in 2008, my mother had passed away, and my dad said to me, "Hey, could you help me with our investments at Fidelity?" So my dad, I'm happy to help, but why don't you do it? He said, "It's not my thing. I focus on making a living. You take care of the investments." So I spoke to the broker at Fidelity. I actually met with him, a really nice guy, and he was praising my mom and said how she had diversified the portfolio in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and short cap, mid cap, and for those of you that know the boxes and the grids, and she did a great job. Happened to have been 2008, so things went a little wacky and needed to be balanced. And discussing this with a broker, and I said, that's great, and it's really nice to see how my mother diversified the portfolio. But everything that she has is entirely on Wall Street. And my personal philosophy, which we'll talk about throughout the webinar, is that a person should divide their investments into three. So Wall Street is a great place for a third of a person's portfolio, but another third should be in something else like real estate or private businesses, whatever. And another third should be in another category. So we discussed that, and he's like, okay, great. So we sold off 2/3 of the portfolio at the worst possible time. 2008, market's down, but that's what all good investors do. They buy high and they sell low. So a good example of that. So we sold off 2/3 of the portfolio, and we invested into real estate, about 1/3, and to private businesses, gold and silver. Did a really nice mix. And then spoke to the fellow at Fidelity and said, okay, now I want to do the same thing with my dad's IRA. And keep in mind at that point, since my mom had passed away, so my dad's IRA basically is now double in size. And he's like, that's great, but retirement accounts are limited to stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And I didn't really understand that. I said, I understand that we owe Uncle Sam money when we take the money out of retirement, but at this point, why can't I diversify where I want to? He said, well, but because you can't. And he said, well, if you want to invest in real estate, you can invest in a REIT. And if you want to buy gold, you can buy GLD and all that stuff. I said, no, you don't get it. I want to buy the building across the street, single family house, or whatever, for example. And he said, you can't. So at that point, when anybody says no to me, I take that as a yes, and let's figure this out. So I spoke to the family attorney and the family accountant, and they both mentioned to me that there is something called a self-directed IRA. But this goes back to like 2008, 2009, and they're like, it's too complicated. My recommendation to you, young man, I was a little younger back then, was to diversify the regular money, retirement money, just leave it on Wall Street. And to me, that's always a challenge. So I'm like, I'm up for the challenge. Started to look into this further and found out that self-directed IRAs are a great idea. And then I opened up a self-directed IRA for my dad with a custodian. And then I wanted to get checkbook control, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And we set up checkbook control, and here it is. Now my dad has a self-directed IRA with checkbook control with a custodian, because obviously we weren't in business at the time. And we then did exactly what we wanted. We sold off 2/3 of the portfolio at a big loss, and we bought real estate and all this other good stuff. And then what happened was, when we were sharing our story and our success, or I was with friends and family, a lot of people said, hey, could you do the same thing for me? And I did. So I helped people set up a self-directed IRA with checkbook control as a courtesy. And after a little while, I realized, hey, we may not be the smartest guys in town, but I said to myself and my partners, I think there's an opportunity. If we didn't know about this, then surely other people didn't know about it. So that's 2009, and we started Broad Financial, which was, it still is, a self-directed IRA facilitator that helps people get checkbook control. We had worked with a third-party custodian, and life was good. We got started in 2009, 2010. After a couple of years, 2011, we realized that we help people initially get set up, but we then hand them over to a third-party custodian. And the custodian was not delivering the same level of customer service as our clients were used to getting from us. So we decided that it's time to open up our own custodian. Went to South Dakota because they are very pro-business and very friendly out there. And I spent a few years with the regulators. And in 2014, we opened up Madison Trust Company as a trust company headquartered in Sioux Falls with our administrative offices here in New Jersey. Fast forward to 2023, we're proud to say we have about 65 employees. Ian is one of the longest standing employees that we have from the old days. And so that's how this whole thing came about of self-directed IRAs. And it started from our family's need to go beyond Wall Street and expand our investment opportunities. And we did this for ourselves and then launched it for other people. So Ian, if you could, with that long introduction, if you can share, how would you answer the question if somebody says, what is a self-directed IRA?
Right. A self-directed IRA at its core is exactly what it sounds like. It's just an IRA that you direct on your own and you have control over making those decisions. You probably don't have an advisor. Some people do, but nonetheless, you're making the decisions at the end of the day. And yeah, you're able to further diversify. Like you said, you can diversify your portfolio in a traditional brokerage account, but this is really diversifying outside of just that into alternative assets.
And sometimes a Wall Street brokerage firm will say, well, you do have self-direction because you could choose any stock, bond, or mutual fund you want. But we're talking about real diversification, which is going out, buying, and I guess that'll be in 2 slides, so I don't want to steal the show over here. So a self-directed IRA allows you to go, the way that I answer it, similar to you, Ian, is that it enables you to go beyond Wall Street. It unlocks the potential of your IRA so that you can invest in almost any alternative asset that you want, which we'll get to momentarily. Okay.
Right, and as you mentioned about how your family attorney was saying how complicated the process was and everything, it's complicated because people don't take the time to understand it and to take the time to really, dig into what it actually entails. Really, the process is very simple. It's just a matter of understanding what those steps are, what you can and can't do, and like you said, we'll get to that.
Okay. All right. So, Ian, what are the benefits of a self-directed IRA?
Boy. What aren't the benefits of the self-directed IRAs? It's really, it's all about what you know and what you have understanding of. You came from a real estate background, so investing in real estate came naturally to starting to diversify in that way. Some people, they understand precious metals a little bit better than other people take the time to understand whatever the asset class might be. That's a true benefit of the self-directed IRA is investing in things that you're knowledgeable with, and then also just feel comfortable with less volatility, better returns, whatever the case might be for you. That's the true benefit of a self-directed IRA.
And yeah, I like how you said before, what aren't the benefits?
Right.
The idea is just giving a person more control. And I guess a question sometimes people ask is, well, why wouldn't I? What's the downside of a self-directed IRA? And the answer is, something that's interesting that Ian, you've experienced as long as you've been here. So we've gone out, and although I said webinar is not a big thing, which we're going to be doing more, so stay tuned. We'll do more of these, and I'm having a good time with you, by the way, with this. So we've gone out and we've done presentations to all sorts of people in all different fields, and people are fascinated. Go to an event, go to a wedding. People, what do you do for a living? And you and I are pretty introverted. So I usually just say I'm in financial services, and if the person goes away, great. And if they ask more questions, I'm like, okay, I got to engage in conversation. So I explain what we do in self-directed IRAs, and people are always the same result. And you see the same thing. It's fascinating. That's unbelievable. I didn't know I could do that. Like, yes, I know you don't know, you can do this. Most people, though, that hear that, they're fascinated, but at the end of the day, they're not the do-it-yourselfer, quote unquote. They're not the type of person that's going to buy a piece of real estate. They don't necessarily know of a hedge fund or a real estate fund or a venture capital fund to go into. They don't have any alternative ideas. So in theory, it's great. But with a self-directed IRA, like you were saying, that a person does need to roll up their sleeves a little bit, get involved, which is the amazing part of it. So for the right person, it's an amazing vehicle. But for somebody that says, listen, I don't know from this stuff, my retirement money and my regular money, it's with my have an investment advisor. I have somebody on Wall Street. They do the investments for me, and I focus on whatever I focus on. So the only real downside is that you need to get involved. And if you're excited about that and you want to do that, then great, this is for you. But if you want to take a hands-off approach, kind of like my dad, and you just want somebody else to do it, then yeah, they probably should just stay on Wall Street.
Right, right. And sometimes even the hands-off approach works in a self-directed IRA if you're well connected with somebody like a fund manager of sorts or whatever the case might be. But yeah, no, you're right. It really comes down to one, either knowing something, knowing someone, or again, getting your hands a little bit dirty and really understanding what you're doing and what kind of investments you're making.
Right. Should we roll up our sleeves now? So, okay. All right, should we keep going?
Sure. Yeah, actually, one thing that I wanted to just touch on is a pretty common thing. I've spoken to thousands of investors at this point through my career so far, and it's not like common knowledge to anybody. Some people will come in, they'll say, yes, I've heard about this before a number of times, but I've never thought about it. I've never pursued it to any degree because there wasn't any urgency to it or whatever the case might be. But I'm always surprised. I've been doing this for years now, and people are still saying, "Oh yeah, I've never heard about this. Why haven't I ever heard about this? What's the reason?" You want to go into that a little bit, maybe?
So sure. So one of the things that if we look at IRAs, so I spoke about the history of our organization, but the history of IRAs. So IRAs started back in 1974. Truth be told, I was alive then. You weren't, but that's a different conversation. So the government creates ERISA, and the idea is the government realizes that Social Security is a great thing, but it's not going to cover everybody's needs during retirement. So how do you encourage people to save for retirement in a world that people like to spend? People like spending their money. So they came up with the tax-deferred idea of an IRA. So you put money away for retirement, you don't pay taxes till you take it out, so you have more money to invest. That actually was a really clever idea because now people are starting to save for retirement. So we could picture, so I was very little, 1974. So we could picture the scene. 1974 rolls around, they announce the IRAs. So where do you open an IRA? At a bank or brokerage house? And now initially the contribution limits back then were minuscule, especially relative to today's money. And so a person would open an IRA, put some money into it, but if you have $500 in an IRA, what are you going to do with it? So you could buy stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So I'm sure Vanguard and Schwab and JP Morgan, all those guys, whatever their names were back in the day, had big billboards and ads saying, open your IRA here and we'll make it easier for you. So that's kind of what happened. And people they opened IRAs, and IRAs were known as investments in traditional assets. But if you fast forward to the 1990s, where at that point, the contribution limits were increased, and people were rolling over money from their 401k, from their employment into an IRA. Now, people had significant sums of money in their retirement accounts. And at that point, people wanted to go beyond Wall Street. They wanted to do more, and they had the ability to do more because with a significant sum, you can do lots of different things. And what happened was the name that was out there, or the advertising, the budgets that the Wall Street firms have is enormous because they make lots of money from this. So they're out there advertising and pushing this narrative. And also people are, again, even my own personal family lawyer and accountant said to me that, you don't want to bother. So, that's not very good for our line of business over here. So there's this concept that retirement accounts are limited to stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and everybody's happy. The Wall Street folks are happy. The media is happy because they're getting advertising for it. And so people just don't know about it. And it's been a 10-year quest or 12-year quest to create awareness. And there is, and the good news is that there is more awareness and there is more conversation about this. And the industry, which people estimate, but nobody really knows, they say about 2% or 3% of retirement money is an alternative, 4%, but even whichever numbers you go with, but if you take 2% to 3%, that's a 50% increase. So over the years, we're seeing that there is more awareness, and that's our quest to continue going out there and creating more awareness so people understand it. I'm not sure what your question was, but did I answer your question?
I think you did. I think you did, yeah.
So, okay, so let's keep going. Let's talk about what you can invest in and what you can't invest in.
Good, yeah. I like the slide. It says, self-directed IRA investment options include pretty much everything, which is not too far from the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about what you know and what investment opportunities are in front of you. The bigger question is really what can't you invest in, what you can't do, because the IRS, the provisions in there, the rules and regulations, they only talk about what you can't do. They say you can do anything except, and then they have a long list of things you can't do and how you can't do them. You want to go into it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So if we start on the left side, what you can invest in. So the most popular, people ask us, this one's pretty easy. What are the most popular alternative investments that a person can invest their retirement money into? So as you said, or as the slide says, pretty much anything. Real estate by far is the number one investment that our clients do. And that ranges from single family rental homes, multifamily homes, to raw land, commercial properties, retail strips. There's no limit in what within the real estate world, and obviously real estate, it's a big asset class. So that's the number one asset that people invest into. And like you said before, people come to a self-directed IRA because they have retirement money in one hand and they have an asset that they want to invest in, or more so, they have an asset that they want to invest in, the concept. So somebody knows real estate, they're like, hey, this is like this is great. I have my retirement money, I have real estate outside of it, and let me buy something in my retirement account. Private placements are the next popular one. And when we say private placements, that's investing in any non-publicly traded company. So it could be a real estate fund, a hedge fund, a private equity fund, venture fund, any type of fund that is not a stock like Amazon or Apple or something like that. And then the third most popular class are promissory notes, which in plain English, I say loans. So if you want to lend money to a friend or a neighbor or a business at interest, that is also a very popular methodology. It could be secured by real assets or it could be unsecured, but those are really the three most popular ones. We have clients that invest in gold, invest in crypto, and that's obviously cyclical. And we can see the clients coming in for crypto based on how the market is doing, but that's always exciting to watch. And then we have a whole host of exotic class, asset classes. So we have clients that own cattle, that own racehorses. Mm-hmm. That somebody bought a boatload of, not a boatload, but a huge amount of lumber because they felt the prices are going up. So the sky is the limit. The only thing that you can invest in, and let you, why don't you share with us the three things that you can't do?
Sure. So the two that the IRS clearly states in the rules and regulations are life insurance and collectibles. You can't get a life insurance policy out on yourself using your IRA or buy that. Collectibles, there's no clear fair market value. That's sort of the issue there, we think, that the IRS has. But then it goes layers deeper than that. So you've got the S corporation. You can't invest in that because there can't be entities investing into an S corp. And so the IRA is considered an entity for those purposes. It would lose its S corp status, and thus it can't be done.
And so those are the three things. And in terms of collectibles, so one is it is very hard to value. And the other concern that I've heard over the years is that the IRS doesn't want you buying a piece of artwork when you're saying, yeah, this is for my retirement, but look at this one, and this is just the Madison Trust logo. But if there was a beautiful piece of artwork here, you say that I bought it for retirement, but I really bought it because I had cash in my IRA. I really like the painting, and here it is. So that's one of the reasons we think. But either way, those three things are off limits, and that's pretty straightforward. And the rest, other than that, like you said, the sky's the limit. So the IRS and the code, which if you're interested, you can call Ian afterwards and he'll give you the chapter and verse in it. And we've had clients that have read chapter and verse and asked detailed questions. And that's why, we have good ERISA counsel behind us that we get answers to every question we get. So, but I think that you had mentioned before that it goes deeper. So why don't we talk a little bit about prohibited transactions and disqualified persons? Because sometimes one of the questions we get is that this sounds too good to be true. And the answer is that there's a framework of what you can and can't do because the IRS wants all of us to save for retirement, which I'm doing. I hope you're doing, a couple years behind me, that wants us to save for retirement, but they want to make sure that what we invest in to save for retirement is truly for our retirement and not really, sneaking ways to do things that are going to benefit us today.
Right. And sometimes it is too good to be true. A lot of people I hear that are learning about this for the very first time, really excited. Oh, I know real estate so well. I want to throw in a couple properties. I just purchased them. I want to just put those into my IRA or maybe use my IRA funds to buy those properties. Unfortunately, you can't do that. You can't be transacting with yourself. There's other disqualified parties that you can't directly transact with. That's one layer to it. Another, again, a lot of real estate keys to this, and happy to dive in deeper, whatever you want to talk about. But
maybe that'll be webinar number 2.
Right. But you can't be, just real quick, you can't do work on the property yourself. You can't vacation at the property. If you throw up vacation rental property, you can't be staying there, you can't rent out a property to your kids or things like that. So there's certainly rules to be mindful of depending upon what you're looking to do and your interests.
Right. And the way that we could describe it, and I think we should do a separate webinar on disqualified people and prohibited transactions, so stay tuned for that. But the IRS wants to make sure that we're doing everything for the benefit of our IRA. So there are disqualified people. So for my IRA, I would be disqualified towards it, and then my ancestors going linear, right? Say linear up, and our descendants going linear down.
Right.
So parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, and their spouses are not allowed to interact with it, which means that if I buy a retirement or vacation home with my IRA, so I can't live there, I can't vacation there, me and my whole family is one. And the other is that we can't actually I can't hire my family members to do work on the property itself. We'd have to hire third parties. And there's many different reasonings, and Ian can give you some and I can give you some, but just for the purposes of this, the IRS wants to make sure what you say, it's that everything is an arm's length transaction. So if I'm going to hire my son to do work on the house, he may give me a good deal where I would be paying less than I should, or maybe I'm paying him more because I like him. Well, some of my boys I like more than the others, but maybe I'm paying him more so that he can get a benefit, and that's not what the IRS wants. The IRS wants us to save for retirement in a fair way that is really, going to help us when we retire, that we'll have more money over there. And what's interesting is when we talk about disqualified people and prohibited transactions, this only exists really in the world of self-directed IRAs, because if you're going to Wall Street and investing in a stock or a bond, there's no such, you're not interacting with the IRA like you are in a self-directed IRA. So you're buying shares in a publicly traded company. And if it happens to be that you own a cleaning company and you do cleaning services for Apple, that's going to be okay. And it's a separate conversation. But the idea is that prohibited transactions and disqualified people is really only for self-directed IRAs. And those rules were created to make sure that everybody does things for the best interest of their retirement account. So I think it's a little overview of what you can and can't do. And the basic takeaway is almost any asset class you can do, and there are some nuances to it, which we could talk about in the future. So.
Certainly. Yeah, and one other thing, and we'll switch to the next slide here, is for whatever reason, the IRS thinks you're not going to give a sweetheart deal to your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your nephews, whatever. But yeah, the vertical is no good. Horizontal, yeah, it's brothers and sisters. I don't know. You don't like them as much, yeah.
That's a good point. The Madison advantage. So now that we've spoken a little bit about self-directed IRAs, what you can do, what you can't do, why you should do them, is what Madison Trust Company brings to the table. And I think that if we go back to the starting point of why we started Madison Trust Company to begin with, and our sister company, Broad Financial, it was to solve a need that we had. And I'm always very, very pleased to talk about that, because some people, they open a business, say, hey, how can we make money? Let's go sell something. And this business came about to satisfy a need that we had, and we did it for ourselves, and then we expanded out. And for those of you that are familiar with Simon Sinek, he's one of my mentors, not personally, but I happen to follow him and I like him. His TED Talk of Start With Why is one of the 5 most popular ones. And he's been very influential in our culture here at Madison Trust Company. And when we say, why do we come to work every day? So obviously everybody goes to work to make a living, to pay their bills. But why do we come to Madison Trust Company? What's our why here, that we're in business for? And the answer is that we truly believe that by enabling our clients to diversify beyond Wall Street and invest in alternative assets, they will have a richer retirement, which means that they will have more money to spend during their retirement. And it's our job, why the 65 of us come to work every day here, is to give our clients a pleasant journey getting there. And with that in mind, with our why, and starting with our story of how we came into existence, really is the Madison advantage. So we have great client support. We are a little old-fashioned in that regard, that we believe in having real people all based here. So we have our 65 employees, mostly in New Jersey. That's where Ian and I are. We have an office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where our technical headquarters are. And we have some of our employees that have been scattered around the country, that actually became more popular, obviously, after COVID or during COVID. Before that, we didn't really understand how a person could work remote, and we all laugh about that. But anyway, so everybody typically started here on South Dakota and has been spread out. But we believe in old-fashioned customer service of picking up the phone, talking to clients, and taking good care of them. And we pride ourselves on that. That's really, really a very important thing. And it's one of the KPIs that I look at is how are we doing with our customer service. The other KPI is that we look at our reviews, and that kind of is a testimonial to us doing a good job. Our fees, so we've taken the approach of having a very straightforward fee schedule. And so that if a client invests $25,000 or $2 million or $10 million with us, it's the same amount of work for us. We do the same processing, and therefore we charge the same fees. We could talk about that. We're very proud of them. So to open an account is $50, 50, and then we charge a $100 quarterly fee for the maintenance of the account. And then we charge $0 for unlimited customer service. So our customer service is our main advantage, and that is included in part of our service. And industry knowledge is really important. So our folks are CISP trained, which stands for
Certified IRA Services Professionals.
So that's the one thing that we actually practiced before. But I didn't want to ask Ian the question if you don't remember, and I always forget what it is. So it is a rigorous training for people in the IRA world, and especially in self-directed IRAs, where there's so many questions that are not the usual questions when you're investing in stocks and bonds. So our employees are trained. And we believe strongly, our motto is that happy employees lead to happy clients, which leads to happy shareholders in that specific order. And we know that if we take good care of our employees, then our employees will take good care of our clients. And then at the end of the day, everybody will be happy. We have a 97% retention rate. So 97% of our clients stay with us, which makes sense because people are investing for their retirement. They're happy with us. And so people stick around for the long term. We have over $4 billion of assets under custody. We have over 1,500 five-star testimonials across the different platforms, Google, Yelp, Better Business Bureau, Facebook, and all those good places. And we have clients in all 50 states. So 99.9% of our business is done over the phone, and it's very rare that we meet people in person. So we feel that we have a very strong advantage. It's a relatively small industry. There are a bunch of players. We believe that we stand out based on the service that we provide for our clients. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and I would also just give some perspective from people that have called in over the years to switch to us. That's a unique perspective that I get to hear on what other companies are doing, good and bad, and what's really held true since I started here is that our primary focus has been on serving the clients directly, and we try and keep our pricing competitive, but at the end of the day, priority is on serving the client, and whatever we need to charge in order to do that to the best of what our clients are expecting of us, that's what we're going to charge. And like you said, we do the same work whether you've got a $10,000 account or a $10 million account. It's the same work that we need to do, same questions we're going to be answering over the phone, same IRS reporting. It's all the same. So we don't need to charge different amounts for different accounts, but it really just comes down to the level of service that we're providing. I mean, there's players out there that people have come to us from that are paying more, charging way more than we're charging and getting significantly less service. And then there's people paying less than we're charging, but again, they're getting less service. So it really comes down to the steadiness of what you're getting and the consistency at Madison Trust.
And I just wanted to add in, it was interesting. So one of my partners, Brian, is in Florida for the week. He's in Boca Raton. I actually mentioned this at the company meeting this morning, and he was wearing his Madison Trust zip up, which we weren't sure if we were going to wear them. We opted not to because we got the whole banner going on in the background here. So he's in Florida. He's wearing his Madison Trust zip up, and some stranger comes over to him and says, "Hey, do you work for Madison Trust Company?" He says, "Actually, I do." He said, "Well, I'm a client," and he said, "I want you to know that you guys provide great customer service. I'm actually an accountant, an older gentleman." He said, "I referred many people to your organization, and I'm so happy to see somebody that works there." And then afterwards, he said, "Actually, I'm a partner there." And he said, "Thank you so much for the compliment." They got into conversation. And then when he called me very excited, I looked up the client in the system and I saw a little bit about the client. So I think that, full circle, that's kind of what we do. And we also believe that we spend a lot of our waking hours here in the office, working together with each other. And we want to enjoy what we do because, gosh, we're here so much, such a big part of our life. So, all right. So I think that leads us to questions. So how's this going to work?
Okay, hi. I hope you guys can hear me. All right, so we received several questions during your presentation. The first one comes from Natalie, and she asks, how about tax liens and deeds?
Of course. Brian knows a lot about that, but yeah, no, absolutely, and that's really where checkbook control. We didn't talk much.
I know
about
that's funny.
That's a good one for checkbook control. So because of the uniqueness of it and how quickly things need to happen, and in general for a lot of different investments, sometimes things need to go quickly. So checkbook control, you'll hear the terms IRA, LLC,
IRA trust,
yeah, whatever different terms out there. But yes, absolutely, tax liens.
Yeah, and to talk about checkbook control, so the basic idea, which actually I don't think, was there a slide that spoke about how it works? I don't know. Anyway, so if somebody comes to Madison Trust Company, the way that it works is it's a 3-step process. Person comes to Madison, they open an account, they use our online wizard. Back in the day in 2012.
That was my first job. I processed the paper applications.
Yeah, so we used to use paper applications back in the day, and we're years later. So person goes online, they still can fill out, we make it hard for them to find the paper application, but you still can if you need to. So they go online, they fill out the wizard, they open an account at Madison Trust. Second step is they fund their account, so they transfer all or a portion, and that's very important, we'll talk about that, of their existing retirement money from an existing IRA or 401k over to Madison, and then they tell us what investment they want to go into. So it's a simple process. They open the account, they fund it, and then we place the investment. And when we talk about funding it, is a myth, and people don't necessarily realize that if you want to open a self-directed IRA, you can choose as much or as little money to transfer over. So if you say, you know what, if you believe in my philosophy of a third, and you say, hey, you know what, I have X amount of dollars in my IRA, I'm going to transfer a third of it. Or maybe you just want to test the waters and transfer 10% of it over into your self-directed IRA, you can get started with that. So that's the typical process, very straightforward. We do all the work. But like Ian was saying, if you are engaging in something that's very time sensitive, so tax liens, that you need to go to the auction and be able to issue funds immediately. Or if a person is investing in physical real estate and they're buying a property and there's going to be a lot of transactions, they're going to be getting rent from their tenants, they're going to pay the electric bill and the utility bills and all the repair people that do work on the property. So instead of having to go do all of the transactions through Madison Trust and send us the paperwork, you can upgrade to what we call checkbook control. And the way that works is that our sister company, Broad Financial, will actually open up for you a self-directed IRA with checkbook control. Actually, I take that back. They will open up a LLC, and an LLC, as you know, is a limited liability company. We open up one specifically for the client, and then what the client does is they instruct us, Madison Trust Company, to invest their retirement money into the LLC in exchange for the membership units of it. So it's very similar. If you buy shares in Apple, you issue $100 to Apple and you get shares in Apple. So we do the same thing here. So Madison Trust will invest all of your retirement money, or whatever portion you give us at your direction. We'll invest it into the LLC in exchange for ownership. So now the asset that you're holding here at Madison is the IRA LLC. You then go to whatever bank you like. There's some banks that we work with. We will then wire your funds to your checking account. And now you have a checking account with your retirement money in it. So you could then just simply place an investment by writing a check. Is that how you would say it?
That was pretty good. Now, I would say, just for clarity purposes, you're the manager of that LLC. So we can't touch it. We can't do anything. We're holding it. We're doing the IRS reporting on the account itself, but that LLC is yours to manage. And that's really the ultimate self-directed IRA in that scenario.
And to that point, so going back to the original story, so when I learned about self-directed IRAs, I understood that. And then I wanted checkbook control. So being that it was my dad's money, I wanted to be extra careful, and I actually spoke with the attorney to understand how it works and set it up properly. So we ended up setting up a self-directed IRA with checkbook control using the IRA LLC strategy is how we set it up for ourselves. And the rest is history. So going back to the tax lien question, which is a good question. So for certain specific scenarios, Ian will tell you, you may want to upgrade to the checkbook model. So therefore you have the flexibility to be able to perform the transactions at the local level without coming back to the custodian.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question comes from An, and it is, if you are a handyman, can you fix your IRA owned properties?
We wish we could tell you the answer that you want to hear, but
unfortunately you can't. So one of the restrictions are that you cannot perform physical labor to the property, and whether you're doing it for pay or for free. So if you think about it this way, like Ian said, and that was a good point, I forgot, that you're the non-compensated manager of your IRA LLC. And therefore, you can then manage the property, you can pay all the bills, deposit all the checks, you could hire the contractors, and you could oversee them, but you can't actually do the work. What some people do is they hire a management company, which obviously there's a cost to that, but some of our clients that have multiple properties, they have a management company that takes care of it all for them, and they're doing their own thing. But you can be the physical person to do the management, but you just can't do the actual work itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. There are two questions about fees. Specifically, is it $400 a year after the account is open? And is that also with checkbook control?
So yes, so from Madison Trust Company, it is once you open the account, which we mentioned is $50 to open the account. It is $100 per quarter. Whoever asked the question is very good with the math. So it's $400 a year. And sometimes we say $400 a year, sometimes we say $100 per quarter. Some custodians charge an annual fee. We charge a quarterly fee. And this way, if a client starts in the middle of the year, they just start paying from when they come. Or if a client finishes their investment and they choose to put their money back on Wall Street, they can close it in the middle of the year. So that is $400 per year. And again, there is no charge for unlimited support, which is the Madison advantage, as we say.
Right, and it's the same for whether you have checkbook control or not on that custodial fee. So the $100 per quarter is the same either way.
And from our perspective, from Madison, so whether we're holding an investment in a piece of real estate, in a private placement, or we're holding the investment in your IRA LLC, which is exclusive for the client, for us it's the same. We're holding an asset at the custodial level. But in terms of fees to open up a checkbook account, what is the range of that for that upgrade?
Right, so it depends on sort of what your needs are, but roughly you're looking at about $1,200
for that, and
to set up the checkbook.
Yeah, and what's nice is we have probably half our clients have the custodial model, half of them have the checkbook model, and we're really agnostic to it. We kind of like the mix of both. So the easy conversation with potential clients is opening accounts easy. It's $50 to open the account, $100 a quarter. And by the way, what are you doing? Based on what you're doing, you may want to consider it because it may be easier and less expensive in the long term for you. And that's a client's choice to choose.
Thank you. The next question comes from Kevin, and he wants to know who or what entity holds my IRA monies in the time between taking it from Vanguard and closing on a real estate property.
I like that question.
So good question. So the money goes from Vanguard, there's about 300 different custodians that we work with. And I remember back in the day, and you were here towards the early days. So we started with an Excel spreadsheet, listing all the custodians we work with and what are their rules. Do you need a medallion signature? Do you need a notarized wires? They'll take a wet signature or not, or they need it. So we work with about 300 custodians now. We kind of maxed out. I don't think, last time I checked with Liam, I don't think he added any custodians to that. So we work with all the custodians. They transfer, we put the request in from the client, they'll transfer the money over to Madison. We bank with Capital One, one of the largest banks. The money will sit at Capital One until we get the direction, and then we will send the money out. Just one point in terms of movement of money, we encourage clients based on their schedule. If a client is in a rush, and maybe we want to talk about that even if they don't ask that question, how long does it take? But if a client is in a rush, we encourage people to use wires, because if Fidelity is going to send us a check, until they mail it, till we get it, then it has to clear. Wires clear in 24 hours, and the same thing on the way out. So yes, there is a $25 wire charge, but it's a small amount of money to shave off a week for the money to come in and a week for the money to go out. It's much quicker, and wires don't get lost in the mail. So
that's true.
That is helpful. So Ian, just on that note, so a question from Daniel, from me. How long does it typically take from start to finish?
So it really, really fluctuates depending upon where it's coming from, and what kind of account it's coming from. But ultimately, normally from start to finish, from the day that you sign the application online to the day that you've successfully funded your first investment, you're normally looking somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks.
And the biggest lead time for that is for us to get the money from the existing custodian. So we request it from the custodian. We encourage the client, hey, reach out to your current custodian, Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, and let them know that this request is coming in and ask them to expedite it. Again, if they wire the money to us, it's much quicker. And we work with all the custodians, and we could tell you that just the track record. Some custodians are really quick and fast. Other ones are not so quick. And then if you are transferring your money or rolling over your money, I should say, from a 401k, that is a process that the client controls. We can encourage the client, but they need to reach out to their existing plan administrator to send us the funds. So that's really the biggest variable that's out of our control. And we do everything we can to expedite that process. But once the money is by Madison and we have your investment paperwork, we have I think it's 4 days that we get the process done. We process it and then we send the money out. But that's why we encourage clients, if you're thinking of doing something, please don't wait for the last minute and then call us in a panic. Yes, you can expedite and overnight and wire, you can do all that stuff, but it costs more money. And truth be told, we don't really like that. We'd rather clients just come in. It's a smoother process for us. Here's how long it takes. So long answer to a short question.
No problem. Our next question comes from Drew, and he wants to know, can you help with offshore self-directed IRAs?
Good question. So that's really where the IRA LLC thrives. So like Daniel said before, you're moving money from the self-directed IRA into a bank account that LLC holds. And then from there, you make your investments. So you have direct control of those funds, direct access to those funds to send them where they need to go. So it's fairly common for people to invest in foreign real estate and foreign companies. And that's generally the way that will be done.
So, and just to further what Ian said, so at Madison Trust Company, we do not place foreign investments. It becomes too complicated for compliance and for legal reasons to deal with foreign countries, foreign currencies, foreign rules and regulations. But you are allowed to, so the IRS allows it, so that anybody that does want to do foreign investments, we encourage them or require them to do the IRA LLC or IRA trust, and they do that at that level.
Right.
Okay, thank you. The next question comes from Michael, and he's asking, what's the auditing procedures on the checkbook IRA?
Okay, so again, it's a self-directed IRA. So you're in control, especially with the IRA LLC. You're the manager of it. We can't even necessarily see what's inside that LLC. We're holding the LLC. You're taking care of the day-to-day investments. And so we do require in January, we require a year-end valuation to update your account so that we can report that to the IRS. That's key. Sometimes we'll ask a couple of questions, but it's not common.
Yeah, so basically, we are, as a custodian, we are required to file a 5498 every single year to the IRS, which the client gets a copy of. It says here is the last known value of the account. If they do a distribution, we issue a 1099-R. And like Ian said, so we ask at the end of the year for the updated value of the asset. We do not require it to be an appraisal or audited. We just want an update. We include that. We file that with the IRS. So the filing is the same, whether it's whatever the asset class is, we file the 5498. And if it is, and typically, because these are all alternatives, we never know what the value of the asset is. So we ask that question at the end of the year. We get the update, we put it into our system, and then I think it's in May we send out the 5498. Okay. Then in May we send out the 5498, and that's all the reporting requirements there are.
Right.
Okay, the next question is on the topic of real estate, and it comes from Aaron. He wants to know, can a rental property have property management?
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very popular method, is that a management company takes care of the asset. And in that scenario, if a client has property or properties and they work with a management company, they don't necessarily need the IRA LLC, because we would buy the asset on their behalf, and then we would pay the management company their annual fee. And then the management company typically will deposit all the money, pay all the things. And then at the end of the year, or quarterly or monthly, they'll just send the profits back to Madison, right?
Right. Usually, yeah. I mean, again, everybody's a little bit different. If you've got multiple properties, then the LLC might start making sense for fees,
Okay.
you know. But yeah, no, the property management company, if you want to be more passive, then yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great. The next question is from Sam, and he's asking, can my self-directed IRA lend money to my business partner or my partner's wife?
Okay, now I got to put our thinking caps on. So I'm buying time so you can figure this out. So the disqualified parties, so we spoke about family members. There also are, oh, the sensor went out because we're not moving around the office and it's blocked by the thing over here. So but they can still see us just fine. So the business part, so the rules are, I don't know if you know offhand. You do?
I mean, yes, it depends. So yeah, the IRS sometimes has issues with business partners.
But isn't it if you own more? I used to know this. I forgot this the nuance, and that's why we have a whole compliance team here. But if a person owns less than a certain percentage in the business, then it's not considered that it's the 10% rule or the 25% rule.
There's so many rules, but
Okay.
yes, yeah.
So there are So there are certain scenarios when you can, and there's certain scenarios you can't. So it's a very specific. But the IRS has clear guidelines what percentage they own in a certain
And
business.
that's why we've got a compliance and investments team to review these things.
Right, but if you ask, so if the person who asked the question, if you want to reach out to Ian afterwards, he'll get a clear answer based on your scenario of the partnership arrangement.
Okay, the next question from Robert is, can you speak to real estate outside of the United States, for example, Mexico?
Yeah, so that would tie into what we said before, that a person you can invest in international investments. So real estate obviously is the most popular, but if you want to invest in a foreign business or anything that's foreign, as long as it's being done through the IRA LLC, that can be done.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question from Mark is, with checkbook control, how do we avoid prohibited transactions?
The key is to know what you're getting into before you do anything. Once you've done something, it's pretty hard to backtrack. So that's what education is all about. That's what we're here for right now. That's what, we'll walk through. If you want to have a one-on-one consultation, we'll talk you through the education side of things. But also at the end of the day, you certainly want to have somebody behind you as well, whether that's your CPA that's knowledgeable on the subject matter or an attorney. You need to know what to do and what not to do before actually doing anything.
Yeah, and that's why on our website we do have educational information about prohibited transactions and disqualified people, and we are going to be doing more information about that. But sometimes at the outset it sounds a little scary, like all these things. But if you think about it, and there's a simple formula that if you take a disqualified party and your IRA, they can't interact. So anytime the person that your IRA is interacting with, if they're not a disqualified party, and then we have the basic list, and on our website we have more information about it. So if they're not a disqualified party, then there's nothing to worry about. So if you're dealing with general businesses that you can't even get yourself into trouble, it's only when you're dealing with family members and only specific ones. And I agree with you. It's a little funny that certain members, can, certain members you can't. And then there are businesses that you own or business partners that are part of that. But once you go outside of that, then it's fair game. But, we could teach you that, and you can learn about that on our website.
Okay, great. This next question comes from Craig, and he wants to know, how does the IRS monitor use of a vacation property in the IRA?
I get this one a lot.
I love that question.
So the short answer
I'm
is...
just going to turn the lights back on, see if it's going to make things
sure.
a little bit better here.
Yeah, so the short answer is they don't monitor it. Neither do we. Nobody has the time or money. I know there's a lot of IRS employees out there, but they don't have the time or the energy to be monitoring every single retirement account. When that does come into play is if you were, say, randomly chosen for an audit or something, then the IRS then will look in and see what they can find, try and flip over some rocks and see what they can find. But at the end of the day, neither us nor the IRS are actively monitoring any of your investments.
It's very funny because yesterday I had a meeting with the marketing team, and this specific question came up and we were discussing it. So the IRS does not audit retirement accounts because they're not profitable things to do. So it's when they audit an individual, if they find things, and like you said, they start turning over rocks to see what they can find.
Okay, the next question from Kartik is, what happens if realized value of an investment is net loss? Do we get penalized by the IRS, or is it all on us? Wins and losses are self-directed?
Yeah, so good question. So it's interesting because in the IRA, if it is a traditional IRA, so that you pay taxes at retirement when you take the money out, or if it's a Roth IRA, so every single year, the profits or losses are not taxable. And that's the beauty of the retirement account, is that you can grow your retirement account tax deferred or tax free if it's a Roth. And the same thing on the losses. So if there are losses, you don't take those losses. It's just the value of the IRA goes up or goes down every single year.
You never pay tax in a pre-tax, a traditional IRA. You never pay taxes on that money to begin with. So by having a loss, there's no anything because you never pay taxes on that money to begin with. It just essentially disappears.
So if a person puts $100 into their IRA and when they're 25 years old, and they're not going to take it out till they're 75. So for the next 50 years, so every year the value will go up, will hopefully go up every single year, but some years it may go down, depends on what happens, and that gets reported on the 5498 to the IRS, but that's just the IRS. The government wants to know, hey, how much IRA money is out there, so that ultimately we're going to be able to tax it, and they keep that as part of their calculation. So the numbers move, hopefully, up over a long period of time, but it's only a relevant conversation when a person reaches retirement and they start to take the money out. And even then, it's just a function of, oh, wow, I started with $100 and now I'm at, $10,000 because it grew over time. And as you take it out, you pay the taxes on it.
Right. Okay, great. All right, this question comes from John. It's on the topic of real estate. He wants to know, if I purchase an investment house and then decide to live in it and purchase it from the self-directed IRA, can I do that?
John, you cannot do that. You can, there's certain people can get unique with it, but again, that's a direct transaction. So you can't directly buy a property from the IRA to yourself personally. What some people will do though, if they know long-term plans for themselves, they buy it when whatever, they're 50 and then they know at 70 they want to retire and live there. What you can do over, whatever length of time makes sense for you, again, talk to your CPA about what makes sense there, but you can essentially do what's called an in-kind asset distribution over whatever length of time that you want to do it. And we can talk the details on that, but that's really the only way to ultimately take the property out of the IRA to be able to then get personal use out of it once it's no longer in the IRA. And then you're paying taxes. If it's a pre-tax traditional IRA, then you're paying taxes as you're taking those distributions over those years on the value of the property.
So, and that's what people do. They will specifically buy a property that they think they're going to want to retire in. So they buy it now at whatever the values are. And then in 20 years, they take the property out of their retirement account. And like Ian said, you could do it over years, which anyway, you have to do the required minimum distribution. And you could do that as the asset in kind. So you could take out part of it, which is a little complicated, but you could do that. Or you could just take the whole thing out. So person hits 72, says, hey, I'm going to retire, take the asset out. So they're not buying it from their IRA. They're just distributing it out of their IRA. It now becomes theirs in a legal way. They pay taxes if it's a traditional account. It's tax-free if it's Roth. And then they can live in there, happily ever after. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are winding down with questions, but this next one is from Terry. When and what do you report to the IRS? And what if updated value is determined after your deadline for your request?
So truth be told, and probably compliance would say I shouldn't say this, but truth be told, not all of our clients fill out the updated account value. So we have about 20,000 clients. We email our clients, we reach out to them, please update your value. But if a client does not update their value, we use the last known value, which was from last year. So if a client doesn't fill it out or they fill it out later, it'll just get used in the following year as the value for it. And again, if it's when a person is not doing a distribution, there's no taxable consequence. So the IRS is not overly concerned. They just want to get a general sense. It's really when a person is doing the RMDs, the required minimum distributions, that is an important number because the amount that a person takes out is based on the value of their account and the whole life expectancy thing. So not to worry if they miss the January deadline of when we ask them to update their value.
Okay, thank you. We probably have time for 2 more questions, and then I do want to let you get to the last slide because some people are asking about your contact information. So this next question says, how is it monitored for RMD?
So for RMDs, it's interesting. I had the same question because when we email clients, we say, if you need help figuring out your required minimum distribution, please call our office. And I'm like, why do we want people calling us to ask for their RMD? Why can't they just call their accountant? So compliance said no, because legally we have to. As a trust company, we have to help people. So the answer is that and this is actually a good question because people that have self-directed IRAs typically also have traditional IRAs. So they'll have an IRA over at, I should talk faster? They typically, they'll have an IRA at Fidelity or Schwab and at Madison Trust. When you do your RMD, and this is actually what I do for my dad because he's of that age, so I combine all of the values of his IRAs, come to the total, then I figure out with the accountant what the amount is. I can do it myself, I know how to do it. And then I do the RMD actually out of the Fidelity account. So I'll sell some of his stocks, liquidate it, make sure I have cash, and then I'll do the RMD. So you can add up all of your IRAs together, figure out the RMD amount, and you can take all of the RMD amounts from one IRA. So typically clients don't do RMD so much from Madison because their assets are tied up in alternatives. They'll do them from their traditional account.
The more liquid assets. Yeah.
Exactly. So we can help a client figure out the amount if they need help with it. That's part of our job.
Okay, great. We are going to stop there with the questions, but for everyone who still has questions, please take note of Ian's contact information on the screen. He is available and would be happy to answer your questions going forward. Thank you to both of our speakers today for sharing your expertise, and to everyone who attended. Have a fabulous afternoon.